Christians in Motion.
This is one of those verses that I feel gets taken straight out of context sometimes, you know? What now?
But when they call themselves a Christian page and they're posting things that completely go against the Bible, that's where I take issue.
This is not what that verse is saying at all. Hello everybody and welcome back to the Christians Motion podcast. My name is Kristen. This is episode 8 this week. I'm flying solo, so you just get to listen to me. This week is probably going to be a fairly short podcast. Some of our podcasts are longer, some are shorter. You know, it just depends on what I'm feeling. So first things first, happy Wednesday. Congratulations on making it halfway through the week. Unless, of course, you work weekends, then never mind. Also, happy autumn, because September 22nd was the first day of the autumn equinox, so yay. I saw a post on Facebook, it just made me laugh so hard, that said everywhere else in the world they say autumn, which is derived from a Latin word, but here in America we say fall, because leaf fall down. I don't know why it made me laugh so hard, but it definitely did. But anyway, happy autumn. Autumn's an interesting time of year because all sorts of new and exciting foods come out, including the famous pumpkin spice latte, which I don't really care for, and candy corn, which I don't really care for. You know, the more I talk about food on this podcast, the more I realize that there's a lot of food I don't like. I never really considered myself a picky person until I started vocalizing this. I don't like pineapple on pizza. I don't like mushrooms. I don't like candy corn. I don't like pumpkin spice lattes. And in general, I don't like artificial flavors. That's why I don't like the pumpkin spice lattes. I don't like that fake pumpkin flavor. Just like I don't like fake banana flavor. Yucky. I also don't like artificial vanilla. I like the real stuff. So, okay, you know what? Fine. Call me a brat. It's fine. But the older I get, the pickier I get, because I know, now that I'm much closer to 30 than 20, that everything I eat is going to cling to my body. So if I'm going to gain weight with the food that I eat, I'm gonna gain weight the right way, not by eating candy corn and artificial crap. If I'm gonna gain weight, I'm gonna do it the right way by eating some real deal yummy yummies, you know. But anywho, everybody loves fall, and I get that. Yay, fall. Fall's cool. You know, there are things about fall I like, but fall's kind of a difficult time for me because I kind of associate fall with death, and I know a lot of people do, because it's like we have Halloween. The reason the leaves on the trees change colors is because they're dying. So yeah, I mean there's definitely a connection between this time of year and death and decay. But for me in particular, the two deaths in my life that had the biggest impact on me happened around the fall. The first would have been my uncle, and let's see, that would have been when I was in the 4th grade, and I was really close to my uncle. My mom actually worked for him and my aunt, so we were at their house all the time. We ended up sleeping over all the time, so we were really, really close. I remember he used to play Pass the Pigs with us all the time, which I thought that was the greatest game ever. But he, like I said, he passed away when I was in the 4th grade, and so that left my aunt a very, very young widow. But he had, I believe it was type 2 diabetes, and when he was diagnosed with diabetes, it was much more severe and not quite as manageable as it is today. Medical science has come a very long way. People who are diabetic now, they can do a lot to manage their diabetes and live a very fulfilling life, but that was not the case years ago. But not only, you know, has medical science come a very, very long way, but he just didn't really take care of himself. He did a lot of stuff to really aggravate his illness. I mean, no disrespect to the dead, but he did. He would do things like he would get in his head that he wanted pie, and not just a piece of pie, but a whole pie. Like that's what he was going to eat for dinner. And he would tell my aunt, his wife, that he's not going to eat anything until he gets pie. And that would put her in a rough situation, because she knew that if he didn't eat anything, his blood sugar would drop. But she also knew if she let him eat a whole pie, his blood sugar would spike. And so it kind of put her in a tough situation, and she didn't always know what to do. But he would do stuff like that. So ornery. But yeah, he passed away when I was in the 4th grade. So I'm not sure exactly how old I was, but it's been over 15 years now. So I think, how old would I have been in 4th grade? Like 10, 11-ish? I don't know. But the one thing I remember most about his death is my aunt, when we walked into the funeral home, she just screamed. And I had never heard that sound come out of a human before, and it freaked me out. And she, like, her reaction to seeing her husband, it upset me. Like, I was more upset about my aunt's reaction than anything else. And when she got that upset, that's when I got upset. And I was sitting in the lobby of the funeral home, and one of my other uncles came up to me, and he kind of sat down beside me. He put his arm around me. He said, "Sweetie, you know, your Uncle Kurt, he doesn't want you to be this upset. You know, he's in heaven now. He's with Jesus. He wouldn't want you to be that upset." And I remember little 4th grade Kristen, I looked at him and said, "Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe he wouldn't want me to be this upset. But the reality is, he's gone, and I'm here. And I just, you know what, I need to cry until I'm done crying." And he just kind of got this ear-to-ear grin on his face, and he said, "All right, I'll leave you be then." And that was kind of my view of grief and mourning when I was a kid. I'm like, I just need to feel what I'm feeling until I'm done feeling it. And sometimes I think when we reach those emotional highs, whether we're extremely sad or we're extremely happy, we're like at one end of the spectrum or the other. I mean, we never stay there for very long. We always come down from that emotional high. But when we're in that high, we kind of just have to go with it. You know, we kind of just have to ride it out. I don't think our view of death and our reaction to death here in America is necessarily healthy. The way my grandma puts it, I think she's 100% right, is that we like to sterilize death. And she's 100% right. Like, we don't want people who are dead to even look dead. That's why we put them in nice clothes and in a pretty casket, and we do their makeup, because we don't want dead people to look dead. And even people that are sick in their older years, we like to shove them away, put them in a hospital or in a nursing home, like, because we don't want to look at them. We don't want to be reminded that that's going to be us someday. And I don't know if that's necessarily healthy, but not just in regards to death, our reaction to death. I think a lot of times, at least here in America, we don't handle emotion very well. I actually remember reading an article that said that it's actually really unhealthy for you to hold back tears. They say if you feel like you need to cry, it's really bad to hold that back. It's like not good for you. And I was like, They're like, if you want to laugh, laugh. If you want to cry, cry. Like, you need to get that out. And I was also thinking of how people reacted to things in the Bible. Like, I think of Mordecai in the book of Esther, like, ripping his clothes and running down the streets. Like, can you imagine here in America if we saw somebody ripping their clothes and running down the streets? Like, we'd be calling the hospital, like, okay, we need to 302 this person. Like, that's not normal behavior for us. But it's like, I think we do sometimes see being overly emotional. We see that as being like a weakness. But the second death that really had a big impact on me was my grandfather. And this, I'm coming up on the 2nd anniversary of his passing. It was the weirdest thing. Like, he was fine, and then all of a sudden he wasn't fine. And it happened very, very quickly. Like, healthy, sick for a few days, gone. And what was rough about it is that the days leading up to his death, he just wasn't himself. And it's hard to watch. It's hard to watch the life leaving somebody. It's hard to see that. And that's where, I was talking about the leaves at the beginning of this podcast, how the leaves become a very beautiful color as they're dying. As morbid and weird as this may sound, there can sometimes be a beauty in death, because seeing my grandpa barely coherent, just not himself, like I said, it was hard to watch. And so when he did finally pass, it was almost like, this sounds bad, but it was almost like a relief, because his mind just was not well, and his body was not well. And people say that all the time, like, their suffering is over. And there is some truth to that. Like, we're so desperate to hang on to people that are trying to chasse off this earth. How many times can people, like, not even breathe on their own, but we keep them on a machine to keep them breathing when their body's trying to go, but we don't want to let them. But the one thing that did bring me tremendous peace about my grandfather's passing is, like, literally the day before he died, my dad went in to pray with him. So my dad would be his son. He went in to pray with him and said, "Do you have any fears? Are you afraid? Do you have any doubts?" Like, my dad went in, like, kind of fishing for information, like, trying to figure out, like, what he needed to pray about. And my grandpa, I'm telling you, barely coherent, eyes popped wide open. He said, "Afraid? Psst, I'm not afraid. I know where I'm going." And he closed his eyes and rolled over and went back to sleep. And I was like, heck yeah, I want that to be me on my deathbed. Like, I'm not afraid of anything. I know where I'm going. And I just thought that was, like, that brought me peace, knowing that he wasn't scared. He, like, even though like I said, he was barely coherent and his mind was kind of not at its best, he knew exactly where he was going. He knew he was going home to be with the Lord. And then I want that when I get to be his age. I want to be that sure of my faith that I know, like, I'm not afraid of anything. I'm going home to be with Jesus. Heck yes. But my grandpa, he had a military funeral. That's what he wanted. He served in the Korean War, but he actually did a lot with, like, computers and stuff like that. So he did the whole military funeral, and so they folded up the flag, handed it to my grandma, they fired off their guns, and then the part that, like, ripped my heart out is as they were lowering the casket, they all saluted it. And sorry, I'm getting a little emotional. Keep it together, Kristen. It was kind of funny. It's not funny, but my dad and my uncle, so this would be my grandfather's two sons, they were sitting in the front row at the funeral, at the gravesite, and they were sitting in these chairs, like, front row, and they were trying to be so stoic, like, we're men, and men don't cry. Well, then my daughter, she started to cry, and that's when these big burly men just lost it. I'm like, stoic, are ya? But I think it's good to cry. I cry all the time. I do. But on a more serious note, I'm not trying to act like death is funny, because it's not. I did just want to take a couple minutes here to talk about that, because it is something I think about this time of year. I used to really hate death, and I used to be really scared of it. But after my grandpa died, and his reaction, like, the day before he died, saying, like, "I'm not afraid of anything. I know where I'm going," that really changed my view on death. But also, ever since I was a kid, the way I handle death, I just refuse to participate in this, like, robotic society where it's like, we cannot show emotion. You know what? The reality was, I missed my grandpa, and I was sad. I know he's with Jesus, but I was sad to see him go. That was my pap, right? And so, of course, I was sad, and I was going to show it, and I don't care who saw it. If I was going to blubber like a baby at the funeral home, then so be it. But I think that the Christian view of death shouldn't, like, yeah, we're sad when people go, but there should also be some hope in it, because we know for those who believe, like, it's not the end. That sounds so cliche, but do we really get our minds around that sometime? Like, my grandpa knew on his deathbed, he's like, this isn't the end for me. Like, he knew he was going somewhere. And so we shouldn't be afraid of death. And I just, this is a really short podcast, but I just wanted to jump on here real quick and talk about that a little bit and some of my stories. And, and I also want to open it up as well. If you would like to share a story about your family, someone that you have lost, and what they meant to you. I love people's stories. I really, really do. I'm a storyteller, and I love to hear people's stories. So please feel free to send me a story. You can email me at christiansinmotion.org/contact, or you can shoot us a message on Facebook or Instagram. And just let me know how do you see death as a Christian? Or should the Christian view of death be different than the secular world? Do you still fear death? Let me know your thoughts on this. I know this is kind of a weird podcast. It's kind of just out of the blue, but I just wanted to jump on here real quick and talk about it. Because ironically enough, death is a part of life. So that's it. Like I said, really short. Be sure to check out our website, christiansinmotion.org. We're all over social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, all that jazz. Consider supporting us on Patreon so we can do things that cost money. Patreon.com/christiansinmotion. And that is it. Happy Wednesday, like I said, and I will see you all next week. Take care. God bless. Bye.